Good morning, everyone. My name is Young Lee, and I am the president and CEO of Damon Runyon. I'm also a proud former Damon Runyon fellow. I'm thrilled to welcome you here. Thank you all for joining us this morning. As I look out on this audience, I am filled with the deepest sense of gratitude. We have endured so much over these past 19 months, collectively and individually. It has highlighted the importance and the need for resilience and persistence, two qualities so important for science. I'm so appreciative for your dedication to our mission at all levels, from our board of directors to our donors and to our staff, and most of all, to our scientists who remain fully committed and undeterred in their research efforts. I'd especially like to thank our wonderful honorees, Dr. Bill Kalin and Mr. Ken Frazier, who we will hear from later in this morning's program. As our late board member, David Livingston, would often say, Damon Runyon is a gem, a national treasure. He would often tell us how proud he was to be involved in Damon Runyon. And thanks to the leadership of David and our board of directors, we have a lot to be proud of. At Damon Runyon, we fund the best young talent, risk takers, and innovators. They are working on all cancers because we believe that it is important to support research that focuses not on just one cancer type, but rather has the potential to impact all cancers. And we are making meaningful progress. Earlier this year, newly reported cancer statistics were released. The death rate from cancer has steadily declined for 27 years and has decreased 31% in that time. There are now over 17 million cancer survivors, and an estimated 3.2 million lives have been saved. This is because of earlier diagnosis, better fundamental understanding of the genetic changes that take place in a cancer cell, and personalized treatment options like targeted therapy and immunotherapy for more effective cancer treatment and fewer side effects. Damon Runyon scientists have been a part of each and every one of these advances. I am confident that because of research done by our amazing scientists, this trend will continue, such that ultimately, cancer will be a fully treatable disease instead of a death sentence. My optimism is shared by the cancer research community. So this December marks the 75th anniversary of our amazing organization. Incredible progress has been made in this time, but we still have work to do. As we look to the future, we have confidence in this next generation of brave and bold scientific leaders who will advance progress against cancer by building on the scientific knowledge and foundations laid out by previous generations of scientists. Our scientists are at the core of everything we do. The people you see in these images are current and former Damon Runyon scientists who interact with one another as colleagues, collaborators, and mentors. For each one of these scientists, their legacy and impact will extend far beyond the discoveries they make individually, thanks to the guidance, support, and intellectual insights they provide to the next generation of cancer researchers. Damon Runyon's focus and our unique strategy will continue into the future. We fund high-risk, high-reward research and the most brilliant young scientists. This year alone, Damon Runyon will invest nearly $20 million in these brave and bold scientists, the future leaders of their fields. This is all thanks to the generosity of donors like you. 100% of your donations fund research, not overhead, and we are so grateful for your support of Damon Runyon. Many of our current and former Damon Runyon scientists are here with us this morning, and we also have a number of our selection committee members who generously volunteer their time and expertise to select the next generation of cancer research leaders. I would like to ask all of our scientists and committee members to please stand so that we can recognize you and thank you for the incredibly important work that you are doing to change the face of cancer. Thank you all. So today, we are very pleased to have the opportunity to hear from two of our scientists who will share their work with you. First up, we will hear from Dr. Priscilla Brastianos, a former Damon Runyon clinical investigator who is now director of the Central Nervous System Metastasis Center at Massachusetts General Hospital. Priscilla?
Thank you so much for the honor to be here. I am so grateful for Damon Runyon's support. So make sure my slides are up there. Thank you. So today I'm going to give you two examples of how Damon Runyon has helped us make a significant impact on patients with brain tumors. So I'll start with the first example. I'll start with a rare brain tumor, craniofringiomas. They are tumors that occur in children and adults, and they can cause significant neurologic impairment through compression of critical structures in the brain and morbidity of treatment. And historically, there's been no effective medical therapy for these brain tumors. And in work we published a few years ago, we showed that the two subtypes of craniofringiomas are characterized by single driver genetic changes. We found that one subtype, 95% of that subtype, had beta-catenin mutations, and 95% of the other subtype had BRAF V600E mutations. Within a couple years of those findings, we started a national targeted therapy trial for patients with craniofringiomas. And we just completed the initial analysis, and we showed that all patients who received one or more cycles of therapy, so more than 2 doses of therapy, responded. So 100% response rate, which we've never seen responses like that in brain tumors. And here's just one example here of a patient's brain tumor, and then at week 8, rapid shrinkage of the tumor. And there was a median shrinkage of 90% tumor across the board in these patients, which was incredibly exciting. We've now taken this translational research model and applied it to other brain tumors and to other more complex brain tumors, including brain metastases. So brain metastases are when cancer spreads to the brain from other places. They're actually the most common malignancy of the brain, 200,000 to 300,000 cases per year in the US, and median survival is still on the order of months. And importantly, patients will often develop brain metastases in the setting of stable extracranial disease or disease outside of the brain. And unfortunately, patients with brain metastases are often commonly excluded from clinical trials because they're very sick or because we've had a limited understanding of the molecular characteristics of these tumors. So with Damon Runyon's support, we actually established the first translational scientific center in brain metastases at Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School. So with this, we have a multidisciplinary brain metastasis clinic, and in the laboratory, we perform molecular studies to try to understand what are the characteristics of brain metastases and how do they differ from their original primary cancers, with the goal to take all of this data back to rational therapeutic trials and take those data back to the clinic as fast as we can. And just as an example in one of these efforts, we characterize brain metastases, compare them to their primary tumors to understand the evolutionary relationship, meaning we try to understand where the different genetic alterations occur. Are they in the brain metastasis, as depicted here by the red? Are they in the primary tumor, as depicted by the blue? Or are they shared, as depicted by the gray? And what we found was that the brain metastases, compared to the original primary tumors, they shared some mutations, but then there was continued significant genetic divergence, such that there were new mutations in the brain metastases. Why is this important? Well, we need to know if therapeutic targets are different in the brain compared to their original primary tumors. And I always like to show this figure from Charles Darwin's notebook in 1837, where he actually showed this branched evolution pattern. And this is what we see across brain metastases. Were there opportunities so we can start thinking about clinical trials for patients with brain metastases? And indeed there were. So more than half the cases had alterations in the cyclin-dependent kinase pathway, also in the PI3 kinase signaling pathway, very frequent alterations. We studied these pathways in the lab with our animal models. And with all of those data in hand, we started a genomically guided trial for patients with brain metastases. And we showed at our initial analysis that more than half the patients had clinical benefit in the brain from CDK inhibition. And here I show you an example of one of the patients, and with the arrows I point to the brain metastases showing before treatment and then after treatment showing that response to therapy. We've now extended these findings to a national biomarker trial across the country, now open at more than 300 hospitals throughout the US using this same model, and we're actively accruing patients to this trial. In addition, using this same translational research model, we now have 6 positive clinical trials for patients with brain tumors, when historically most trials have been negative. So in conclusion, Damon Runyon helped fund novel research in my lab that helped us not only make important biological insights into brain tumors, but more importantly, helped us identify new therapeutic targets for patients. And bench-to-bedside science has led to 6 positive clinical trials impacting patient care throughout the world. And most importantly, doing the right clinical science or basic science, mapping the genetic profiles in primary and metastatic brain tumors is critical for uncovering novel therapeutic targets. So I'm so grateful to Damon Runyon's support. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. And next, I would like to introduce Heather Yo, also a Damon Runyon clinical investigator who is Associate Professor of Surgery and of Healthcare Policy and Research at Weill Cornell Medical College and Associate Attending Surgeon at New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell Medical Center. Heather?
So thank you for the opportunity to talk about my work. As all the scientists here will tell you, Damon Runyon is an amazing foundation, and it supports many of us with what is high-risk and high-reward research. I do research in mobile app and mobile health technologies. So I'm betting all of you have a phone in your hand, some of you probably hiding it under the table if my talk gets too boring. But it's important to understand that mobile apps and mobile technology are ubiquitous. In fact, over 90% of adults have mobile phones, and about 60% of adults use the internet daily, often related to healthcare. What we know is that patients are more likely to use an app or an app technology if they think that it will help their healthcare. So the question is, why aren't we using apps every day in healthcare? People have short attention spans, but post-op management of cancer patients is ideal. They are high-risk patients with high complications who are in a stressful time in their life and have the potential to correct those things and to contact their physicians. In addition, most post-operative care is about 30 days, so we can actually monitor patients very closely. So I started my research in early 2014, I'm at Cornell University or Cornell Medical Center, and I started working. We have a tech campus that helps coordinate development and apps and technology, and I reached out to the tech campus and said, I take care of patients every day. Our teams are overwhelmed. It's hard to contact them. It's hard to figure out how we can best manage them, and I'd like to try and figure out ways that we can streamline things. And after doing a literature review, interviewing physicians, interviewing nurse practitioners, we developed an app that is not fancy, but it gives opportunity for patient-recorded outcomes, patient photographs. We linked it to a Fitbit, and then we piloted it. with the help of Damon Runyon. Support from Damon Runyon helped us to complete the pilot, and it helped us to move on to a randomized controlled trial. We started with a very, very basic freeware app that we piloted, and then we were able to actually hire a developer and create a much more robust app. So one of the things that we first found is that if you look on the internet, for example, to try and find freeware pictures to put on your app to get interest, is that there really was no racial, ethnic, or gender diversity. So we focused on that in our app because my patients are very diverse. In addition, our app has opportunity for reminders. We sent little drink reminders, and so I'm a surgical oncologist, but colon cancer is my specialty. So for my colon cancer patients, I've got a little colon there, and as they check off the boxes, the colon fills up. So they complete their colon, which, you know, it's a little colorectal humor. But one of the things that I really worked on is making sure that this was not more work for physicians. The worst part of my job is the documentation part, and so I wanted to try and streamline that. The app actually sends alerts if patients trigger alerts, and then once the alert is sent, it actually also sends an email to the physician, so they don't have to check every day and see if the patient's triggering alerts. But it really tries to streamline things along the way. So with the help of Damon Runyon, we are in the middle of a randomized controlled trial of my app in conjunction with, or compared to just the standard of care that patients usually get. In our initial accrual, I've learned a lot along the way, which I didn't realize. In our initial accrual, I said, oh, let's do iPhone. Everyone has an iPhone. But then I discovered that actually most people don't have iPhones. They're expensive. And so we were able to, with Runyon funds, get our app into Android. Androids are more difficult to program apps in because they change. Their software platforms are more varied, and so for every update, we need to update our app. So thanks to the continuation grant, we were able to complete that. Many of you know the reason we didn't have this breakfast last year is that we hit a pandemic. And I will tell you, I know many of the researchers here felt it. At my institution, all medical research stopped for almost a year. Any non-COVID related research had to stop, so we stopped accruing patients to trials. In addition, because no patients generally weren't getting screening colonoscopies, patients weren't getting screening mammograms, so actual diagnoses of cancer went down. So the last year has been a little tumultuous for cancer researchers, but I will tell you that the first email I got was from the Runyon Foundation that said, we're in a pandemic, but we are going to support you in your research. So that was very important, and I appreciated that a lot. So we are now in the middle of our randomized trial. We've enrolled over 90 patients. We are starting to understand the trajectories of recovery. I can actually tell a patient, oh, on average, you know, by day 12, you'll be about 80% of the normal steps you normally would take. And I'm able to see healing of wounds over a daily period instead of months. So the alerts are really related primarily to dietary management and hydration status. We have colon cancer patients, liver patients, and pancreas patients. I'm not sure why my pancreas folks didn't show up on the slide. But we are tracking readmission, we are tracking return to baseline function, quality of life, and a number of other metrics. Just want to summarize with some interesting steps. As I mentioned, the pandemic has affected research, has affected life, and has also, I think, going to be having prolonged effects on cancer care over the next several decades. It is necessary. Patients do like notifications, so we found that that's important. I actually have been thinking of how we might be able to use a gaming strategy and behavioral economics to trigger patients to be more invested in their care. And one of the next things that we are applying for funding for right now is translation of our apps. We know that there's disparities in cancer care, and the pandemic has shown us a lot of the disparities, and I think that my goal next is to translate apps into other languages. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you, Priscilla. We're so excited about the progress that you are making, and we're certain that your work and that of other Damon Runyon scientists will lead to significant advances for cancer patients. So now we have the privilege of honoring two exceptional people, Dr. Bill Kalin and Mr. Ken Frazier. I sincerely thank both for their leadership, their integrity, and their commitment to scientific excellence. Dr. David Livingston was scheduled to introduce Dr. Kaelin this morning, and as you have heard, passed away tragically just a few days ago. David was a longtime and very generous friend of Damon Runyon, who served on our board of directors and previously led our scientific committee with enthusiastic and unbridled passion and dedication for our mission and to our scientists. David also mentored and trained Bill Kalin as a postdoctoral fellow in his lab, and they remained close colleagues and friends. He said that he could not be more proud of anyone than he was of Bill. Dr. Bill Kalin is the Sidney Farber Professor of Medicine at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Harvard Medical School, and at Howard Hughes Medical Institute investigator. He has numerous scientific accolades, which you can read about in his bio. And most notably, as you've heard, he was awarded the 2019 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for the work that he has done that has paved the way for promising new strategies to fight cancer and many other diseases. We are so fortunate to have had Bill's involvement in the leadership of Damon Runyon for 15 years. He initially served as a member and then chair of the Damon Runyon Clinical Investigator Award Committee that actually selected Priscilla and Heather, who you heard from just now. And Bill joined Damon Runyon's board of directors and was elected vice chair of the scientific programs in 2016. And he currently also serves as the chair of the Physician Scientist Training Award Committee. And we're so grateful for his scientific leadership and commitment to our mission. To show our gratitude for Bill, I'm pleased to announce that the foundation is naming a new recipient of the Damon Runyon Physician Scientist Award in his honor. The William G. Kaelin Jr., MD, Physician Scientist of the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation, is Dr. Albert Kim, currently working under the mentorship of Dr. Priscilla Brastianos, who you heard from earlier this morning at Massachusetts General Hospital. Albert's research focuses on using liquid biopsy and MRI to non-invasively identify therapeutic targets for brain metastases. Albert, please stand and be recognized. Bill, many thanks for all that you are doing to help cure cancer and to support, very importantly, this next generation of leaders in the field. Please join me in welcoming Bill Kalin to the podium.
Well, thank you very much, Young, and thank you all for being here. I will confess I'm still processing the loss of David, and my mind's not working quite clearly, and I'm a little more emotional than usual, so if I make it through this without tears, it's going to be a minor victory. So it always feels like I'm coming home when I come to New York. I was actually born in Jamaica Hospital in Queens. My father was the first member of his family to go to college. In fact, his father and my father during the summers laid the reinforcing steel for some of those bridges some of you took to get here this morning. He eventually became a successful lawyer whose offices were actually, ironically, down the street from the Damon Runyon offices downtown. And my mother was an actuary at MetLife. I think we're in the shadow of the MetLife building right now. But she then, thankfully for me, became a wonderful homemaker who raised 5 children with me as the oldest, and by the way, she was an absolute saint. So since winning the Nobel Prize in 2019, I've had a lot of time to think about how lucky I've been. So I've certainly been lucky to have incredible family and friends. I've already mentioned my mother. Some of my family is here, one of whom even changed my diapers, but I'm not mentioning any names. I had wonderful teachers, first in parochial school in Rockville Center, if we have anyone here from the South Shore, and then in Fairfield, Connecticut. Was fortunate to grow up in an era where science and engineering received bipartisan support because of the Cold War and the space race. That was quite helpful, actually, as a young person. Young people do listen to these things. And then I was very fortunate to study and to train at Duke University and Johns Hopkins Hospital, and later the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Harvard, where it reinforced the simple truth that you grow faster and learn more when you're surrounded by people who are smarter than you are and more talented than you are. But I will tell you, nothing prepared me for the day I met my eventual laboratory mentor at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, David Livingston, who was simply the smartest and wisest person I ever met. Now, I began my postdoc with David in 1988 as a postdoctoral fellow, but you have to understand, this was with no intention whatsoever of being a scientist. My goal was to work in David's lab for 18 months, at which point I would be board eligible and I could go into clinical practice. And I can tell you, in some parallel universe, I have a private practice on Park Avenue right now, and I'm living a very different life. Now, why did I not think I could be a scientist? Well, partly it's because my first laboratory experience in college was so dreadful that my professor gave me a C- and literally told me, you should never set foot in a laboratory again. Now, scientists don't believe anything until it can be reproduced. So then, at the Dana-Farber, I went to work with another scientist prior to David, who literally called me into his office after 4 months, and he said that he was quitting science. So now, I mean, this was actually worse than me not being a scientist. I'm causing the people around me to quit science. And so that's how I happened to wind up as an orphan with David Livingston, who took me in to his laboratory. In fact, in thinking back, at that very moment in time, if Las Vegas was giving odds of me winning the Nobel Prize, I mean, how many zeros would you have needed? But David transformed my life. From the moment I entered his laboratory, he showered me with brilliant ideas. Frankly, I only understood about 10% of them, but that was actually enough to have a successful postdoc. He showered me with enthusiasm. He methodically sculpted me into a scientist. He taught me how to frame and tackle important scientific questions. And I did eventually succeed in David's lab, but nonetheless, as any scientist will tell you, there are days that are frustrating and they're hard, and I threatened to quit at least half a dozen times. And each time David would see the look on my face, he'd call me into his office, and through his wisdom and strength of persuasion, he kind of talked me off the ledge and kept me from quitting. And I can tell you, David's mentorship of me and his advocacy for me didn't stop the day I left his laboratory. It continued even to last week. So I started my own laboratory in 1992. I was blessed to have a series of very talented young people entrust me with their training, and we're going to come back to young people in a moment. It seemed like every time federal funding got particularly tight and I wasn't sure I could keep going, magically some private foundation would step forward. In one case, it was actually an individual who simply made out a check to keep me going. And again, that transformed my career. Now, you might be wondering, did I ever get Damon Runyon support? But you've already heard the punchline. It's extremely difficult for MDs who come late to science after finishing all of their clinical training to compete with their PhD counterparts who've been in the laboratory for years. But I'm so grateful, largely through the generosity of two of our wonderful directors, Lee Cooperman and Michael Gordon. We've created this new Physician Scientist Award that you heard about that is specifically for the so-called late bloomers, the MDs who want to come back to science late to make a difference. Now, in 2001, give or take, we discovered the mechanism by which the cells and tissues in your body sense and respond to oxygen. That was the work that led to the Nobel Prize. But more importantly, it's already led to new drugs for the treatment of cancer, one of which is being developed by Merck and was approved in August, I'm happy to tell you, as well as new drugs for the treatment of anemia. And I can tell you the fact that I won the Nobel Prize was more a tribute to David than it was to me. I've tried to give you a flavor of just what he had to overcome to make me into a scientist. So David was committed to the Damon Runyon for 30 years, and as you've heard, I've been now working with the Damon Runyon for 15 years. So what makes the Damon Runyon so special? Well, firstly, a lot of medical philanthropies simply can't avoid the temptation to oversimplify and overpromise with respect to the promises they're taking on. The Damon Runyon has never done that. The Damon Runyon makes one promise. The more we invest in science, the more knowledge we will create, and the more knowledge we will create, the closer we will be to the end of this horrible disease. And the Damon Runyon also understands that the young people are the most precious but also most vulnerable part of the entire scientific ecosystem. So our entire focus is on the young people. And we make sure they have adequate resources and that they have adequate mentorship. And I'm living proof that mentorship really, really matters. So we place a lot of attention on mentorship. Now, another part of what Deb Coleman calls our secret sauce is our selection committees. My father-in-law worked for Gray Advertising in New York, and one of his favorite sayings was, A's hire A's and B's hire C's. So we make sure our selection committees are A's and A pluses, and I've had the privilege of chairing some of those committees. So we find the best and the brightest young people wherever they are. Now I will tell you, we hold them accountable for these precious resources we're giving them, but we don't micromanage them any more than you want to micromanage a great artist. You have to give scientists the freedom to follow the science. And the good news is this formula clearly works. As you've heard, we've had 13 Nobel laureates, including one of this year's Nobel laureates, who we actually, as you heard, supported twice. So in closing, one of the themes today was how lucky I've been. Clearly the luckiest thing in my life was to meet Dr. Kaelin, my wife and my soulmate and partner in everything we ever did. She became a very successful breast cancer surgeon. In fact, she was one of the most prominent breast cancer surgeons in New England. She received numerous awards. And then in 2003, ironically, she herself developed breast cancer, but because of modern therapy and advances that you've helped make possible, she was cured of her breast cancer. However, tragically, in 2010, she developed a glioblastoma. Now, when she had developed breast cancer, I remember her telling our two young children, don't worry, this is a wimpy cancer. Mom's going to lick this wimpy cancer, which she did. Unfortunately, glioblastoma is not a wimpy cancer. In fact, unfortunately, as physicians, we both knew this was about as bad as it gets. And we knew the textbook answer was, she had a year, maybe if we were lucky, 2 years. So I immediately got on the phone and I put together what I think is possibly the best dream team of scientists and clinicians that has ever been assembled. Many of whom actually have been supported by the Damon Runyon at one point or another. Some of whom are actually in this room. Carolyn's brain tumor genome was one of the first to ever be sequenced. We identified several mutations that led to ideas about precision therapies. We put together custom therapies using, again, targeted drugs for her. And we were able to keep her alive for almost 5 years, which I can tell you wasn't long enough. I told you I was going to be emotional. But it meant she could see her oldest child graduate from college. She could see her youngest child matriculate at college, so they were tucked in, and I think she knew they were going to be okay. Now, during this very painful process, a couple things were clear. First of all, everything we had available to treat Kaelin was based on science that had actually been done 10 or 20 years ago. So if, God forbid, one of our children or grandchildren gets this disease, they're counting on the science we're doing right now. Secondly, I can tell you there was no worse feeling when I, as a physician and cancer scientist, realized with respect to Kaelin, we had simply run out of bullets. And I'm determined that someday that's never going to happen again. So thank you very much for supporting the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation.
Thank you so much, Bill, for sharing your journey and your story with us. We're so honored to have you here with us today. And thank you for all that you do for Damon Runyon and for science as a whole. So I'd now like to welcome to the stage Dr. Tony Coles, who is, in his own right, an extraordinary leader in the biopharmaceutical industry. He is currently chairperson and chief executive officer of Cerevel Therapeutics, a biopharmaceutical company dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the brain to treat neuroscience diseases. Dr. Coles is a founding investor and the chairperson of Humanity Therapeutics, and is a longtime friend of Damon Runyon and of our honoree, Mr. Ken Frazier. Tony?
Good morning. It's really a great honor to stand before you and to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Ken Frazier. Ken really needs no introduction, and there simply are not words to speak to the quality of the man he is. He's been an inspirational leader throughout his long and storied career, which includes tremendous contributions to the legal, business, and humanitarian fields. Kenneth C Frazier, as we all know, has been the great leader for Merck, and this culminating a 30-year career at that company, which is where he and I first met in 1993. Under Ken's leadership, Merck delivered innovative life-saving medicines and vaccines, as well as long-term and sustainable value to multiple shareholders and investors. His career has been storied, his contributions myriad, and his footprint wide. Ken's been a true guardian of Merck's 130-year legacy, fulfilling his belief, and I quote, that the most important role of a leader is to safeguard the heritage and values of the company. And safeguard them he did. Ken substantially increased Merck's investment in research, including early research, at a time when that was not a popular thing to do, and when most of Wall Street criticized harshly those decisions. But it was brilliant, because it's yielded the company we have today and the contributions to the lives of so many that have helped to transform their lives and their opportunity for an even better existence. Prior to Merck, Ken was a pillar of the legal community as a partner with the Philadelphia law firm of Drinker, Biddle, and Reith. He joined that firm in part due to their strong reputation for doing significant pro bono legal work. Now, these are little-known facts about Ken, unless you have studied his career as I have. Ken contributed to the legacy of the firm through his work teaching black law students in South Africa and fighting for more than a decade to secure the release of a man on death row for a crime he did not commit. Ken has long been committed to serving his fellow human beings throughout his career, whether through the law or through advancements in science and medicine, and while his list of awards, accolades, plaudits, and contributions are myriad, I'll share just a couple of them that you may not know. In 2018, Ken received the Harvard Law School Association Award, the highest honor given by that prestigious association in recognition of his extraordinary service to the legal profession. In that same year, Ken was named as one of the world's greatest leaders by Fortune magazine and was also named one of Time's 100 most influential people, and again made that list in 2021. In 2019, he became the first recipient of the Forbes Lifetime Achievement Award for health care, and in 2021, his peers named Ken Chief Executive Magazine's CEO of the Year. But it's the personal stuff that matters the most. I personally am grateful to be able to call Ken colleague, friend, and mentor. He has inspired me since I met him 3 decades ago, and I can tell you what Andrea, his lovely wife, has known longer than any of us. He is an extraordinary man. His unwavering commitment to do what is right always, no matter the cost. His principled leadership and humanity-based corporate stewardship has taught us all simply to just be better. I'm pleased to announce today that to honor Ken, the Damon Runyon Cancer Foundation is naming a new recipient of the Damon Runyon Fellowship Award in his honor. The Kenneth C Frazier Fellow of the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation is Dr. Alain Bonney. Currently working under the mentorship of Damon Runyon board member Elaine Fuchs at the Rockefeller University, Elaine Fuchs is also a former Damon Runyon Fellow herself. Elaine's research focuses on the signal pathways and molecular cues that coordinate the transition from inflammation to tissue repair in response to acute skin injury, signals that are co-opted in certain skin cancers. Elaine, would you please stand and be recognized? So to my great friend, my mentor, my hero, and a superhero to all of us, I'll now turn the podium over to you. Ken?
So I want to start by thanking my good friend Tony for that incredibly generous introduction. You can tell he's a friend by just what he said, right? So thank you so much. I also think I would be remiss if I didn't start by also offering my condolences to everyone at Damon Runyon on the sudden passing of the longtime board member, Dr. David Livingston, who I met, but I got to know Bill through your commentary this morning. And so thank you for that commentary, and I'm honored to be on the same program as someone like Bill Kalin. Dr. Livingston, obviously, from what you heard, had a storied career and was devoted to what this organization is all about, and the fruits of his efforts are, among others, one Nobel Prize winner who's with us today. I also want to say it's great to be in the presence of the next generation of cancer researchers this morning, including Dr. Brastianos and Dr. Yo. Thank you for sharing your research with us. I always look at my iPhone differently now. I also want to acknowledge my fellow Penn Stater, Dr. Bonney. Congratulations on your well-deserved fellowship. Dr. Livingston understood that it is through the sponsorship of innovative researchers like you that we will continue to make important strides in the fight against cancer. I'm privileged to be connected to your efforts and your future efforts, and I wish you tremendous success as you advance your research. I'm a lawyer, you heard that, but not in the pejorative sense of the word. I stand here in true awe of the scientific talent and scientific excellence represented in this room, including two tables of Merck scientists who've joined us here today to represent the more than 20,000 people in Merck R&D, people who get up every morning motivated to find the next scientific breakthrough. Their tireless and inspiring efforts have helped usher in a new era of cancer treatment, and it is their commitment that has made it possible for me to stand here today and be recognized by an organization as extraordinary as Damon Runyon. So can I turn to my colleagues and ask you to stand, because any recognition that I'm getting today is derivative of the work you've done. Please stand. So I'm just stepped down as the CEO of Merck 3 months ago, and my life feels very different, among other reasons because I don't have regular and frequent access to these scientists who I'm fiercely proud to call my colleagues. So for more than 70 years, Damon Runyon has uncovered, inspired, and funded breakthrough cancer research that is helping to turn the tide against this disease. Your incredible ability to recognize extraordinarily talented scientists and the most encouraging ideas has netted us some of the most exciting and foundational discoveries in cancer research not to mention, again, the now 13 Nobel laureates born out of your funding. And you know it's a great organization when they don't claim the 14th because they have so many. There is no doubt that you've been a critical partner and respected stakeholder in the efforts to overcome cancer, and it makes the honor you've bestowed upon me and my colleagues today more meaningful. When I look around the room, I know that it's filled with brilliant minds who've dedicated themselves to the difficult and tiring work of overcoming cancer. I'm also reminded of the importance of partnership and collaboration. I've long believed that collaboration is a prerequisite for innovation. By working together and pursuing new avenues with shared focus and determination, we've started a new era in cancer research, one with unprecedented progress and full of new hope for patients. Indeed, from 2017 to 2018, the cancer death rate fell by almost 2.5%, a new record for the largest one-year drop. Decade after decade, we're gaining momentum, more so now than ever before. The honor bestowed today upon Dr. Bill Kalin is a perfect example of how industry can work in concert with academia, government, and nonprofits to advance promising scientific discoveries and push us collectively forward. A few months ago, Merck launched a drug called Welireg, the first HIF-2A inhibitor therapy approved in the US and an extension of Dr. Kaelin's Nobel Prize-winning research into the molecular mechanisms underlying how cells adapt to variations in oxygen. It is only through Dr. Kaelin and his colleagues pioneering research into the HIF transcription factor in von Hippel-Lindau tumors that Welireg exists today as a new treatment for patients with this devastating disease. We're proud to have helped realize this transformative approach to cancer treatment and to help bring it to the patients who need it. Of course, that breakthrough hypoxia research and the numerous research innovations begun by scientists honored here today are also reminders of how critical it is to fund early research. It took decades of continued effort and scientific determination and insight to translate those early findings into useful compounds. Only through perseverance and the belief in the potential of that research are VHL patients today able to benefit from a new treatment option. It is that undaunted hope in new discoveries that makes Damon Runyon such a special organization, one that believes in the power of science and is committed to furthering at its earliest moments when it is merely a glimmer in terms of the promise for the future. It's all too easy to focus on the brightness of late-stage research and the advancements that seem close, to ignore the often riskier and more challenging early-stage discoveries, those that still have a long, fraught path ahead. But it's those first stages where breakthroughs are born and new treatments like Welireg take shape. Merck's Keytruda, the first approved PD-1 inhibitor and an immunotherapy treatment that has ushered in a new standard of care for some cancers, had a similar beginning. By placing a bet on its potential and believing in its promise, it is now approved for 30 different indications across 16 tumor types, plus 2 tumor-agnostic indications, and has treated more than 750,000 patients worldwide. We are incredibly proud of Keytruda and what it has meant for people with cancer. Better yet, its potential is still being realized. The Keytruda clinical development program consists of more than 1,500 clinical trials across a wide variety of cancers and treatment settings. It also includes partnerships with more than 75 other companies and academic organizations to study Keytruda in combination with other treatments so that we might make an even greater contribution in the future. But as important as Keytruda is, we don't intend to rest on our laurels. Merck has a broad oncology program with a rich and deep pipeline of both early and late-stage assets. We continue to study and identify mechanisms of actions that have the potential to transform the field and add differentiating value. Because we too believe in the promise of early research and what it can mean to those who need our research most. So as we celebrate the progress humanity has made against cancer and honor the scientists whose pioneering research has made this new era in cancer treatment possible, let us remember not only the importance of early research, but also realizing its potential. Together, as industry and academia, as governments and nonprofits, we can ensure that the best of our breakthroughs come to fruition and that we make even new strides on behalf of patients. So that someday we might stand here, as Dr. Kaelin alluded to, and not only celebrate the brilliance of the early cancer research, but also the defeat of cancer once and for all. Thank you for your generous listening.
Thank you so much, Ken. And on behalf of our entire board of directors, I'd like to again congratulate and thank our two honorees, Bill Kalin and Ken Frazier. I think for many of us, this might be one of the first in-person events that we've attended since the pandemic. And we are so, so grateful that you have taken the time to spend the morning with us. We hope that you were inspired by what you heard from our scientists and honorees and enjoyed this celebration of science and of scientific excellence. Again, your generous support of Damon Runyon enables us to continue this very important work, and 100% of all donations fund cancer research. So again, thank you for joining us. And I see my colleague Kim with our, we're gonna do a quick raffle for the Broadway tickets because we're also excited that Broadway is open again. So we want to send somebody to a show. All right, and our winner is a Damon Runyon alum, Thomas Norman at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Tom. Congratulations. So this concludes our program. Thank you all again so much, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again very soon. Thank you.